to make that work. So our motto has been, if we have a feature of the OpenStack, we want to go work with the OpenStack community to either add that feature or fix a bug. We didn't want to fork it and do it in our own. We thought that would have been a more complicated thing to do long term. So our motto is from day one is that we want to upstream first. We want to go work with the OpenDLI community, Open Contrail community to put the features that we need versus trying to do it like in our own repo. So that's sort of our, like the three mantras, I think, like integration, testing, and working with upstream projects. So here's an architectural diagram of OPNFV. So this is an architectural diagram of Daniel release, which first came out in March-April timeframe. So if you look at the left-hand side of things, it should look pretty familiar, pretty similar to an SE NFV architectural diagram. Like you have, compute, storage, and networking, and the data plane at the bottom. So that should look pretty familiar. So all these highlight some of the upstream projects that fall into each of these buckets, like network virtualization, things like OpenDaylight, OpenContrail. In compute virtualization, we have like KVM and LXC if you're using Ubuntu. In storage, we got Ceph and other communities that we're working with, and obviously that OpenStack just spans across all three of those buckets. And I'll talk about the infrastructure piece at the bottom in a minute, and I got to see some of the infrastructure we have here at III. We also have like a hardware infrastructure that's available to the community that they can use. What we found out pretty early on was that we can't really do an effective development work of OPNFV in a virtual environment because we thought maybe we'll use Rackspace or other cloud-based solutions to do development and deployment. But what we found out was that we need an actual hardware infrastructure to do a lot of our work. So we have Bare Metal Lab that's hosted by OPNFV along with some of the other community members of OPNFV that are providing the infrastructure. I'll have a section that talks about this in a minute. And on the right-hand side, I have a better slide to talk about our projects, but it talks about what types of projects we have. I mean, it talked about integration and testing already, but we also have like a telco feature-related projects. Like IPv6 is very important, obviously. Fault management and high availability, like Docker project falls into the category, falls into like a telco feature-related projects. And we also have projects that are focused on like continuous integration and deployment, which I'll talk about a little bit more. And obviously we have all of our releases come with like a documentation, and we also have a security team making sure that we are using good secure practices for security. So we have it's a pretty small team, but they do like regular security scanning to make sure that you're not, for example, putting things like passwords in your file, right? So that's being done on a routine basis. Any questions on our architecture? And then this will get slightly updated for our upcoming release Euphrates. Yeah, go ahead.
But as we know that the e-version will be released in this month.
Yeah.
So what's the new big things?
Yeah, I'll talk. So it's not going to change a whole lot. Like a couple of things that are worth noting for Euphrates release is one is we're going to have Kubernetes support for a number of our installers. We have enhanced a testing projects like NFV mentioned as an example that's somewhat new that's participating for the first time in OPNFV. And the third piece I'm forgetting, but we'll probably come back to the end. So we got, so I'm going to talk about cross-community CI. There are a number of projects that are using a more real, a cross-community CI aspect of things that I'll talk about in a minute. So those are probably the three important ones. So that's, the TSC is going to vote on it actually tonight. That's the meeting actually tonight that I have to attend. So TSC is going to vote on the release date. So we'll see when it actually releases.
Is there any new projects in Mono?
So OpenBaton is participating for the first time. Like ONAP, their first release is not until next month, right? So we'll probably have an ONAP related project in our F release. But Open Baton would be the new addition on now. So, yeah, and then speaking of management and orchestration, I mean, Dagny was the first release where we had like an OpenL integration. The first time we had actually the manual piece, like that was part of our release. So that's going to hopefully continue on and grow. All right, so jumping back and forth. So as I promised, I think this slide does a better job of defining some of our projects. And if you wanted to see the details of our projects, and then I can send you these slides later today, so you don't have to furiously take notes, so you should be able to get it. If you want to look at our list of like the projects that are active, this is a wiki page that you can go to look at our currently active projects. So what we want to do, what we're trying to do in OPNFV is sort of focus on this like a platform layer for NFV. So we want to do the deployment on hardware. There are a number of projects like I already talked about. There are projects that are focused on like FD FIDO as an example, and DPDK that are working on like a data path layer of the networking stack. Networking control. This is where the SDN controls come in, like Open Contrail, Open Daylight. The management system, whether that's Kubernetes or the containers, and OpenStack, that's where it fits in, and orchestration we just talked about. And what's also new is that we have like new projects that are focused on like a data analytics. It's working with like a Panda and SNAS IO, related projects. So these are relatively new projects that are part of OPNFV. And we want to sort of compose these NFV stack so that people that are developing applications, especially VNFs, it's easy for them to like deploy. They don't have to worry about this composition of this platform layer. So they can just take advantage of the OPNFV scenario or platform. So they can just deploy an application on top of it and to deploy to deploy an NFV solution. So the term that we use, so in case you're not familiar, what we have in OPNFV is a number of different scenarios. Like a scenario consists of like different components. Like you can have like OpenStack as an example for this layer. You can have like Open Daylight for SDN controller, and like specific features that you want to use, like whether it's IPv6 or you want to have like a fault management solution based on Docker. So what we do is we compose these into a scenario, we deploy them on a bare metal, we test them, and then if we find bugs or if we want to add new features, we can just continue to evolve that particular scenario, and then we just do that over and over again. So this is what OPNFV sort of contributes, and if you're providing an application layer or a VNF, you can just, in theory, deploy on top of it and just make it work. We want to provide sort of a no-stack world for people that are developing applications. So hopefully that made sense. But yeah, I didn't want to like a detail like what. We also have a different diagram that we need to update that shows like which project falls into each element of the stack. But if you have any questions on that, just let me know. Okay, and then the other piece that I talked about was the infrastructure piece of it. And we were talking about Jack earlier. He's sort of the project lead for the Pharos project. What the Pharos project does is that Pharos just provides an infrastructure for OPNFV community to do development work and then deploy the solutions on a variety of different hardware platforms. So we have a lab in Portland, Oregon that's owned by, quote unquote, owned by OPNFV. So that's sort of a community, lab that's actually managed by OPNFV. But we also have various community members, companies like Huawei, China Mobile, ZTE, Okinawa Open Labs, Orange, INEA Software, and INEA Software actually has an ARM-based hardware infrastructure that's available to the community. So, and also Ericsson has a big lab in Europe. So all these like different hardware platforms are available to do development and deployment work. So we're able to make sure that OPNFV works across different hardware platforms, whether it's x86 or ARM, and helps with this is a key vehicle for doing our development activities and also deployment activities on a daily basis. So all of these labs are quote unquote sort of federated, and you can create, if you're working on a project, and if you want to deploy your scenario on a daily basis, you can work with one of the lab owners to actually facilitate that work. So if you look across all of the labs, during release cycles, and then, some of these labs, a majority of these labs are owned by OPNFV member companies, but some of these labs are actually provided by, they're not even, members of OPNFV, but they contribute their lab resources to the community. I mean, a couple of examples, this one is a company called Flex in the US. And they have a OCP-based platform they're providing to the community that's being used. Another one is like Beijing Internet Institute in Beijing. They're no longer a member of OPNFV, but their Ferris Lab resources are available to the community. And so if you go to, particularly to the wiki page, which is the second link, it'll have a list of like the labs that are available. It's about 12 to 15, I lost count, of labs that are available that's hooked up to our Jenkins tool chain in OPNFV, so they're doing continuous deployment and testing and development work for OPNFV. So the last link here that I want to point to, so Lab as a Service is a new concept that's we've been talking about for at least like 6-7 months as a community. So this is a new infrastructure that's being discussed. So this is a new infrastructure that's being discussed, and if you go to the wiki pages, it's pretty lengthy. It details on what Lab as a Service is. But so what the community learned over the past few years is that Pharaoh's infrastructure has been very helpful for OPNFV developers. So if you want to do development and deployment work on bare metal, it's a fantastic tool. So that's been very valuable resources for the community. But what we realized was that for people outside of OPNFV, like especially upstream communities like ONAP, Open Daylight, or even users of OPNFV, Barrows is probably not always the most appropriate infrastructure that you want to use. Because what Barrows is, a lot of times on the Barrows lab, you're deploying like OPNFV from ground up. Like you're deploying OpenStack, Open Daylight, and other components that you want to integrate, and also do like a full level of suite of testing. And that activity, like to bring up OPNFV and go through the testing cycle, takes about 2 hours. So it's a pretty lengthy process, and then as you've probably experienced this already, it's not the most intuitive thing to do, right? Unless you have a lot of experience with it. So what we want to do is we want to provide a lab as a service environment. So if you just want to deploy a particular, like if you want to deploy your application on top of an OPNFV scenario, it would be nice if you have an already deployed scenario available that you can deploy applications on top of, right? So you don't have to go through the entire life cycle of deploying and testing OPNFV. Assume that you have an OPNFV scenario already deployed, and you can deploy your application on top. So it's more lightweight for a lot of the users. And also, if you want to just swap out a component, right, rather than just deploying everything from scratch, wouldn't it be nice to have some sort of environment where you can just do a simple deployment and in a swappable fashion, right? So Lab as a Service is a concept that's being discussed, and then there's a proposal, it's on the wiki page as well, for the hardware environment that's going to allow us to do that. And this is currently in discussion with our board members, because obviously it's, if you look at the number of servers we're talking about more than 50 servers across both, including both x86 and ARM architecture. So it's going to require a lot of financial resources to make that happen, and this is being discussed with the board. But I encourage you to go look at Lab as a Service wiki page, so that's sort of the next evolution of the Pharaohs project. So the next component I'm going to talk about is testing. And we're talking about this earlier today. We have, this doesn't even show you all the testing projects that we have in OPNFV. There are other testing projects like Barometer, NFV Bench, and others that's been added like recently or since this diagram was created. But we have several different testing projects that are focused in different areas. Like Funk Test is focused on functional testing. Yardstick is more on the system level testing. Right now, this is the inspiration for the Yardstick project came from one of the SC testing specs, system level testing specs. We have virtual switch performance testing, storage level testing, and then the other activities that are very actively happening right now is doing like a stress level testing on a longer horizon. So that's what the bottleneck testing is looking at right now. And the other activities that's happening pretty actively right now is compliance and verification testing. So the goal is to have some sort of compliance program with the appropriate logo. So it's quote unquote like this solution is like OPNFV ready as an example. So the Dovetail project is working on that right now. They're actually going through the beta process as we speak. So they have a suite of tests that are the purpose of it is for compliance and verification testing, and that's work is going on right now. And then I'll talk about Plug Fest in a minute when we talk about events, but you'll probably see without the ultimate having a lot of activities at our Plug Fest in December. So that's coming soon. And all of these testing, if you go to like the test results.opnfv.org page, you'll see the results of like a daily testing. I believe that this site gets updated once or twice a day with the testing results. And we have obviously a database and the way we, also the test results page in a nice graphical fashion summarizes the results of the test. And if I can, let me just quickly go to the page and give you a little sense as to what I'm talking about here. So we have test results from various releases, and Euphrates is our upcoming release. This activity is currently ongoing. So you have, sorry, this is being cut off, like testing results for like Funk Test, Store Perp, and Yardsticks and various tests. And if you click on Funk Test as an example. So, for example, for each of the scenarios, this is for the Apex installer. This particular scenario isn't doing too well, but it's basically no SDN, but it's got OpenStack, KVM, OBS, and EPK, it looks like with HA, high availability features. So it gives you sort of the score, 100 being perfect, obviously. And then it gives you status of where the scenario is in terms of the testing cycle. So it's looking at basically test data from like the past 10 days. So this is like continuously being updated at least once a day. And then it shows you the trend of how the testing results have looked like in the past like 10 days and the score and how many iterations it has gone through over the past 10 days. Yeah, and then, the first tests were doing that well, but you'll see other tests from scenarios that are doing much better, closer to 100% than 20%. And then, this is related to both the Ferris infrastructure and the testing slide that I just covered. So I just wanted to give you a sense of how our CI/CD pipeline is put together. And then, you've obviously done this in QCT already. So the Faro spec calls for 6 servers, like one is a jump host, and there are 2 compute nodes and 3 control nodes that sort of, as a default spec isn't defined. And anybody can basically set up this, Faro slab in, Faro's pod in your lab, following the guidelines on our wiki page. So basically, we have a jump host that's connected to our Jenkins tool chain, and this is pretty open. And this is, what we kind of walk through in Meetup, right? Because I think QCP folks want to set the OPNFV environment. So basically, the jump host is connected to our Jenkins tool chain, and it basically, downloads, your OPNFV ISO, if you will, or RPM package, depending on which installer you're using. So you basically grab OPNFV software, and then you also pull down various testing images. We Dockerize both Pong tests and YARSync images in Docker, in Docker Hub, so you can just pull those down and run through. After the deployment, you can basically run through the testing cycles. So this is sort of our CI/CD pipeline, and then you can just hooking it up to our Jenkins tool chain doesn't require any signing any legal documents or membership by any means. Anybody can basically do this, assuming you have a hardware or even virtual environment that you want to deploy and test OPNFV on. And sort of related to CI/CD, just wanted to talk to you about our previous workflow and the workflow that we're proposing to move forward. So I already mentioned that we work with a lot of upstream communities like OpenStack. And the way when we started, or even to this day, what we do is that, let's say we have a telco feature or bug that we want to fix in OpenStack as an example. And then, we figure out the requirement, we find out what the gaps are, what the bug is, and we basically submit a patch up to OpenStack, right? And then, OpenStack will test it, and then they'll release it, it'll come out whenever the next release is, 4 to 6 months from now. And then, once that new OpenStack version is released, then it comes downstream back to OPNFV, we integrate it, and then we deploy the solution and try to test it. But so this is how it's supposed to work, working with upstream, like OpenStack or OpenDaylight, it's pretty much standard across the board. The challenge with this model is that because our release cycles don't perfectly align all the time. We have a 6-month release cycle. OpenStack has a 6-month release cycle. OpenDaylight has 6 to 8 month release cycle. What could happen is that, let's say we found a gap in OpenStack, we want to address it, we submit a patch. Sometimes we'll have to wait 5 to 6 months before it becomes available back to OPNFV as their next release point. And so that's obviously not ideal. We want to be able to quickly contribute a patch and then deploy an OPNFV almost instantaneously, rather than waiting 4 to 6 months for the next release of OpenStack to be available. So this is a model that we used to operate under, working on a stable branch of OpenStack or whatever upstream community that we're working with. So this model, if you're an operator or stability and regular release cycle is more important, then this model, I guess, waiting 4 to 6 months isn't too big of a burden because you're out to stability. But if you're a developer, that cycle is just taking way too much time. So what a lot of our community members have been doing is rather than work with a stable branch of upstream, just work straight from the trunk, or work with the master branch of OpenStack and OpenDaylight. So you can do a lot quicker testing, a lot quicker, a patching of bugs, for example. So that effort is called a cross-community CI. One of the stickers that I brought today is on XCI. I have a separate slide on that. So the model that we're proposing, going from blue to sort of this green arrows, we submit a patch and we want to test it right away, rather than waiting until the next release cycle. and then provide fast feedback, and then if it works, great. If not, then submit another patch and test almost instantaneously. And then the feedback cycle gets reduced from 6 months to like less than a day in a lot of instances. This provides for more flexible, development for a lot of the OPNFV developers. And like I noted earlier, for some of the projects, even for the upcoming Euphrates release, they've been using this model, like working with the master branch of OpenSec or Open Daylight versus working on a stable branch. So like I said, I have another slide on this, which is actually the next slide. So this required a lot of, in theory, this works, pretty well, theoretically. But there were a lot of discussions with different communities to come to an agreement and define a process of how this is going to work. It took several months to do that with OpenStack. Same thing with like Open Daylight and Fido. And then when OpenO was an independent, separate project before it got pulled into ONAP, we're already starting to work with OpenO to define the cross-CI process with the community. And the conversation is going to continue with ONAP. We sort of came up with sort of a branding for, doing CI across different communities. So it's called like SCI. It's sort of the nomenclature we came up with. The goal is to provide faster feedback and then reduce the development cycle for a lot of our developers. And we have a solution brief that you can download, which got published in the last couple of months, I believe. It's pretty good read, about 12, 15 pages if you want to learn more details on how the cross-CI is working. And then I'll try this. We also have a quick 3-minute YouTube video that I can play. This works.
But XCI is the cross-community continuous integration project, and it's really bringing together the different networks. Working in orchestration projects in a common set of tooling, processes, such as bug reporting.
Let me start this over again, sorry.
XCI is the cross-community continuous integration project, and it's really bringing together the different networking and orchestration projects in a common set of tooling, processes, such as bug reporting, actually consolidated test infrastructure, and that environment. The ultimate goal of all of this is to both reduce costs, create a more efficient environment where developers are being as efficient across the projects as they possibly can, so that all of the projects get to their end result faster.
XCI is a fast integration and deployment from the master branch by which we can get immediate feedback for future development and bug fixing activities.
XCI, cross-community continuous integration, is very important. It's a great idea to develop based on community ideas because of the fact that they are an integration project pulling in a bunch of different other community work. So instead of just pulling it in and testing, but testing across their communities gives them immediate feedback, which is the whole goal of CI in the first place.
We start talking about OPNFV testing and integration activities, and in essence OPNFV is an open source project that is dealing in integration and testing. It is important to have continuous integration in place. And OPNFV mainly utilizes stable versions of upstream projects, and this essentially gives you a stable version of the platform. But if we want to enable countries to run DevOps way of working, we must work on junk, which means we must consume latest versions of the upstream projects we are working on, such as OpenStack and OpenData. Those community CI is an activity that tries to make this real by working with OpenStack and OpenData and other communities closely to bring latest and greatest versions of these components to OPNFV and have the working reference platform which is based on the latest versions of these components. The cross-community CI is an activity that puts all these communities together and provides value to this ecosystem.
Why we started in the XCI initiative and OPNFV is doing the XCI initiative is because it allows the applications like service function chaining to test the master branch of OpenStack and OpenData, and that means that we are able to test the latest patches from the people, so that we can very quickly detect that a patch that is going to break our test cases. So we will be able to fix that at the very first stages of the development cycle.
XCI benefit the industry because it's a continuous integration. So we test of different products because in OPNFV we test OpenStack, OpenData, and so on. We integrate and test them continuously. So the benefit for the industry is to have a solution that works and it's integrated and works. And if you break it, then the CI will detect that. So we track different upstream projects and we make sure that they stay stable.
Hi, welcome to this presentation about testing for NFV. So I am Jose, I work for Ericsson and doing some mainly OPNFV contributions, right? I've been there for 2 years, and this is my colleague Trevor from Intel.
Sorry about that. Okay, and then I think the first speaker on the video is Phil. He's the executive director of Open Daylight. And the other thing that I want to point out from cross-community CI, from an efficiency standpoint, we do a lot of work with like Open Daylight, and in discussions with them, what we found out was that we're like in OPNFV, we're running the same test that Open Daylight's already run. Like, why are we even doing that? Like, it just, we're not adding any value by running the same test like twice. So what we wanted to do, like working across community, is to streamline some of those, like especially like the testing activity, so that it reduces the cycle that's required to do like deployment and testing. Like if somebody's already figured out that this thing works in Open Daylight, then you don't necessarily need to test it unless there's a reason to. So efficiency is another benefit of like moving to this across CI model, and we're trying to do that like across different communities. We talked about the Danube release and our upcoming Euphrates release. If you guess, like our release names are named after rivers. And our goal is to go to different parts of the world, like different continents basically. So we started with Arno in Europe, Brahmaputra river in Asia, Colorado in the US, Danube, and we came back to Asia for Euphrates release that's coming out in the next week or so. And then we also already determined the names of our F and G releases. So F is going to be Fraser, it's a river in Canada, and G is going to be Gambia, and obviously in Africa, so our first release name in Africa. So we have about roughly 6 months release cadence, and our first release Arno, and not having gone through like a massive open source project before, what I learned from Arno, and that I verified this with other communities, is that your first release is, you're trying it out for the first time. So this is sort of the big purpose of the first release is to figure out what your release process is going to be as a community. I have a slide on our member companies in a minute, I mean, you're working across like 20 plus organizations and you're working for the first time as a community. So what you want to do, really define in the first release, is to define your process as a community of how you want to do releases in the future, or how you want to do releases as a community. So this was very instructive in terms of like how different projects came together, how you even define a release criteria, right? And how you want to do testing as an example for OPNFV was important. So I mean, our release took a little longer than we had initially anticipated, but I think it was very instructive in terms of figuring out how we work as a community and define processes, and the number of projects that have participated in RNO. I forget the exact number, but it's definitely less than 10 projects that participated in RNO. And that number jumped to like 30 plus in Brahmaputra. And the number for Euphrates is 30 plus, I believe. But the Brahmaputra, our second release, was the first time we did like a massive parallel, like a simultaneous release process. We hired a release manager, and it obviously got a lot more complicated, jumping from like 10 projects to 30. So that was our second release, Brahmaputra, and this is where you definitely went beyond just integration and testing. We had a lot of telco features like IPv6 and Docker and other projects that were participating. And our latest standard release that came about 6 months ago, this is the first time when we had the nano integration. A lot of the data plan acceleration projects like FDS participated. In the next slide, Euphrates, and I think I talked about some of the highlights earlier. Obviously this will be the first time where we'll have a number of Kubernetes-based scenarios, and also containerized version of OpenStack, right? Not just Kubernetes, and then at least 2 or 3 projects are actually using the cross CI approach for the first time during the release cycle. And additional like testing projects that I talked about earlier. So some of the like numbers that we put together a couple of weeks ago for the Euphrates release, we had 36 projects participating, over 200 developers around the world that were participating in the Euphrates release, and also a number of organizations like 30 plus, both members and non-members of OPNFV participating in our release cycle. And I'll have a slide on our intern program in a few minutes. We launched our intern program early last year in 2016, and it's been an amazing success. But a lot of the interns typically participated in sort of the supporting work, not directly related to the release, like things like creating like a dashboard or helping streamline some of the databases for the community, as an example. But we had like 4 interns that were actually actively contributing to the Euphrates release projects, which was pretty impressive. And I mean, credit not only goes to the interns, but the mentors who mentored these interns. If you were at our Beijing summit a couple of months ago, we highlighted a lot of our interns that were there. Been very, very impressed with the interns that have been working in OPNFV, and wanted to highlight their contribution to our release cycle. And some of these numbers that I talked about earlier, and like I said, this is about from 2 to 3 weeks ago, so this number has definitely gone up. We had over 8,000 deployments of OpenStack across different Veros labs during the release cycle. I mean, both virtual and bare metal deployments of OpenStack. And then to put it in context, this number of OpenStack deployments for our Brahmaputra release was about 1,500. So it significantly has gone up over the past a few release cycles. And when we first shared this number back in Brahmaputra days with the OpenStack community, they were just like stunned, right? I mean, and then this was done like all in an automated fashion. Like it wasn't like somebody was like doing it manually. So I think like shortly after the Brahmaputra release, our TSC chair back then, Chris Price, was interviewed as like one of the super users of OpenStack. So this is sort of the number of like different deployments that we do like OpenStack and OpenDaylight. And then every time the OpenStack base scenario is deployed, we run through our funk test test suite, so over 8,000 functional test runs. And like I said, we had upstream deployment of like the Kubernetes, Fido, and others. So these are sort of the, you'll probably see this in some of our marketing messages when we formally launch these, but so this is some of the high-level stats that I wanted to share for these release. So I think, yeah, this is probably the last slide on OPNFV overview. Like, any questions, or was that helpful, or did I bore people? But if you have other questions on like OPNFV in general, please let me know. I mean, I obviously didn't do justice. I mean, OPNFV is a fairly large project. I think if we count the number of like active projects, we probably have more than 50. So, give you a very high level view of some of our activities. But if you have any follow-on questions after today, please let me know. So next, I'll talk about our community. So this is our current members of OPNFV, and we have, obviously like at several different levels. And what's unique about our project, Open Daylight and Linux Foundation, I think, had like a year and a half head start compared to OPNFV. What was unique about OPNFV was that from day one we had operators involved. Like AT&T, China Mobile, Orange, Telecom Italia, and others. And then, shortly after launch, we had other like operators join, like KT and SK Telecom in Korea, and a number of other like operators that's been contributing to OPNFV. And also, probably about a year into our existence, we created a membership category for associate membership. And this was for, basically nonprofit and academic organizations. And this is, you see a logo for IIII here. And all of these associate members have made like a significant contributions to OPNFV. And we've been like very ecstatic about a number of progress that's been made in a number of different areas. We have these associate members in different parts of the world. We have, Korea, Taiwan, like SDN NFV Alliance we talked about in China. They joined as a member shortly before our summit. Shenzhen has been very active in Canada. They also host a meetup group in Ottawa. They've been very active. And actually in Korea, they've also been active in like organizing meetups as well. UNHIOL, I don't know if you're familiar with them, they do a lot of interoperability testing. Their contribution was very influential when we put together our Plotfest event. And they also host a lab as a service environment in their lab. So the associate membership participation in OPNFV has been phenomenal. Very happy with that. So this sort of gives you a view of our members, but like I said earlier, your membership is not required for like a technical contributions. And just wanted to show you a couple of stats that I pulled together from our developer dashboard. And here's a URL. So we hired a company called Liturgia, and they develop a lot of developer dashboard so you can keep track of like developer activities and also develop, get a sense as to our development pipeline. So one of the stats that we have available is like what different organizations are participating or contributing to OPNFV. So you'll see, I won't name all the companies here, like companies like Cisco, SUSE, and HPE and others that are contributing to OPNFV. And what's been interesting about OPNFV is that, so this pie chart, you don't have to know what each of the individual companies are, but if you look at like who's contributing 50% of the code, and this has been pretty consistent, it's been about 4 to 5 different companies. And this is not like always the case in other open source like projects. If you look at like other open source projects, you'll see that a lot of times it's dominated by like 1 or 2 companies. So like you'll see like a 50% of the code coming from like 2 companies. But ours has been a little bit more balanced, I think. So it's just been good to see. And, you know, like I said, not all of these are members of OPNFV. It's been really good to see contribution from a number of different organizations. And like this one here says unknown, but most likely those are like most likely those are like interns for the most part. And the other thing I wanted to highlight was like where the commits coming from. So this gives you sort of the geographical spread of our community. So obviously this is where UTC is, or Richmond Meantime. So this is like people in Europe, this is people in North America, and this is like Asia Pacific, right? So this is like obviously China, and then +9 is like Japan and Korea. If you look at, so obviously we have contribution coming from like multiple time zones and different geographies. Like if you look at the sheer volume of contribution, like from China, the contributions from China is probably on par with the contribution that's coming from North America. And I don't know if this is always the case if you look at other open source projects. A lot of times they'll be dominated by like one particular like continent. But I think ours is like evenly spread out across geographies, which has been really great to see. And that picture is from our summit in Beijing. I mean, just, you know, if you go to our events, it basically reflects the diversity of our community, not just in terms of languages and countries, but also by like companies and organizations. It's a great community to work with. So that's sort of our development community. And I talked about interns a little bit. So just wanted to give you a quick overview of our intern program. You've probably seen from like I got a lot of inspiration when we launched our internship program from like other open source projects like Google Summer Code and also like Open Data. And those are, and then there's also an outreachy program that's, you know, targeted more towards like the female and other underrepresented communities. But what those internships have in common is that they're focused only in like the summer period in Northern Hemisphere, like June to like August timeframe when school's on vacation, and their interns work like full time. But I wanted to sort of, you know, modify it in a couple of ways. One was that, you know, why do you have to wait until June to find an intern to help out on your project? Like, what if somebody's available to do some work in like September? Like, why wouldn't you allow that, right? And obviously, when school's in session, it's a little bit more difficult to do, right? Because in summer, obviously, you're on holiday, you can spend like 40 to 50 hours a week on the project. But I wanted to give students flexibility to work part-time, like 20 hours a week. We had a number of students doing that, and that's been very successful. I mean, of all the things I've done over 3 years in OPNFV, like internship is probably the best thing I've done. And making it more flexible so that the student can work anytime during the year, and also allow them to work part-time so they can still go to school, but spend a decent amount of time during the week contributing to OPNFV. And this is sort of our dashboard, or job board, if you will, of different projects that we have. And this is just like the 2017 internship projects, and it shows you which projects are in progress, which have been completed, and which ones are still looking for interns. This is already out of date. I think we filled the last of our opening like a couple of weeks ago. But by the end of this year, we'll probably have like 15 interns either completed or like well on their way to complete their project. And you'll see like different types of projects, like, you know, VNF onboarding, and then providing Kubernetes support for our pump test project as an example. So we have a lot of interesting projects that, so what happens is that, backtracking a bit, so any of our community members, if they're willing to mentor a student, they can propose an internship project. They post it on the wiki page, and if any student's interested, they get in touch with either me or the mentors to start the interview process, if you will. And then, you know, and then if they get selected, they'll just start working. as soon as possible or whenever it works for the student and the mentors. And so in a true open source fashion, a lot of these interns are from different countries versus the mentors, right? So the mentor could be in Spain and the intern could be in India as an example. But to my pleasant surprise, it worked amazingly well. I mean, a lot of these students are, some have experience in other open source projects or even other open source internship projects, and they're just, able and willing to learn remotely without a lot of supervision. And we only have maybe 3 or 4 cases where an intern actually worked in the same city as the mentors. But in most cases, we had like interns from all over the place. We just hired one in Cameroon. I don't know how anyone in Cameroon found out about our internship project, but it was amazing to see. So this has been a great addition to our development community, and getting these students involved in open source projects in general. I think it's been a wonderful thing to see. So that's sort of our internship project, and again, like this internship opportunity is open to any student anywhere. So if there are students in Taiwan, they're willing to work with our mentors, around the world. They're more than welcome to, right? And another great thing about our internship project is that you don't have to have a work authorization to work in the U.S. as an example, right? If you're a Taiwanese student, you can just stay where you are and just work remotely with a mentor. So it's another good thing about this internship, and it's been, like I said, it's been very successful, and we'll definitely want to maintain this going forward. The other community that's of importance, besides the developers, is obviously the users of OPNFV. So we've had not just operators, but people that have been trying to deploy OPNFV in different places of the world. So we have, this might be outdated, we're up to about 20 meetup organizations worldwide in different geographies. We actually have more meetup organizations outside of North America, which is amazing. Obviously, we have several places in Europe, in Asia Pacific. I was talking about this with Annette at lunch. We have a very active group in Shanghai that's managed by Kubi at Huawei. We have a meetup group in China, in South Korea, and also a meetup group that's been pretty active in Tokyo as well. They at least have like a free meetups, and they're going to have another one this week, and several several others in Asia Pacific, like India and like Vietnam. I mean, I don't know how they found out about OPNFV. This is all grassroots. Like, we didn't tell anybody in Vietnam or ask anybody in Vietnam to start a user group, but somebody just contacted us and said, how do I go about starting a user group? And we obviously love this like a grassroots movement in a true open source fashion. And the one I've been like mostly involved in, because I live in the Bay Area, we have a Bay Area user group that's organized by Ben Hu at AT&T. And we meet about once a quarter. I think our next meetup is in November, before Thanksgiving in the US. And what we've been doing in the Bay Area is basically going to different member companies, or there was one meetup, they weren't even a member company, they just reached out to Ben and said, we'd like to host a meetup. We experimented with like a couple of different formats as an example. I think first, like at 3 meetups, we met around lunchtime. We just ordered some pizza and drinks and got together at like places like Huawei, like Spire, hosted an event, and then just sort of meet over lunch. Or the last time, like a Cable Labs hosted our meetup, and it was more like a happy hour. We just ordered like some beer or pizza, and had a number of people giving presentations on like a new project proposals or ideas. It's really up to the user group organizers locally to sort of set the agenda. I just saw the email from Kubi. They're having a user group meeting, I think on the 22nd. It should be Saturday. And I think locally, like Huawei and ZTE folks wanted to do something together. So we have people from like ZTE talking about own app as an example. And there'll be presenters from like both ZTE and Huawei as an example to talk about various aspects of user group. And we've been very I'm very happy with how things are gone. And it works all differently in different regions. Like we have a Meetup group in Espoo, Finland, and they always meet at like a Nokia campus because it just works well. And they have a sports bar at Nokia. And then the venue's like really ideally suited, so they just have like a different sponsors who pay for like beer and food. But I think they met like 2 or 3 times. I was like hosted by I was sort of paid for by different community members. But yeah, so been very happy with these user groups across the world. And what we're seeing, like notice that it's called Open Source Networking User Group, not OPNFV, because what we're trying to do is sort of leverage different user groups that have been around. Like ODL had separate user groups versus OPNFV, and I don't think it just makes a whole lot of sense. Like we're all in the networking space, we're all curious about what other communities are doing, so we're going to see a sort of a consolidation of a lot of our user groups. Like especially like for example in the Bay Area, like the ODL and OPNFV user groups kind of merge and become like one entity, which makes a lot of sense because we talking about a lot of times the same topic. So yeah, and I mean, happy and excited to be at the first user group meeting in Taipei. Hopefully it continues, and this is all like self-organized. Like I know OpenStack is a vibrant like a user group all over the world, and we sort of want to follow that model. And speaking of users, we also have an advisory group from the end users. So this is sort of a separate, sort of a working group, if you will, that's comprised of you need to be employed by like either a carrier or a service provider to be part of the end user advisory group. And this is open to both members and non-members of OPNFV. So you'll see advisory group members from NTT Docomo, China Unicom. They're not members of OPNFV, but they're part of the end user advisory group. Deutsche Telekom is another good example. They're not members of OPNFV, but they wanted to provide feedback from an end user standpoint, particularly to the technical community. Because they want to talk about their use cases and also their pain points or their challenges that they're hoping OPNFV community can help address. Or even talk about we're going to have a new release of Euphrates. They can look at Euphrates and say, provide feedback from an end user standpoint. Maybe there's something that OPNFV as a community have not had been addressed yet. So those are the feedback that we're looking for, and then this end user advisory group, they meet at least once a month. I mean, it's not in certain points they've been meeting like twice a month to talk specifically about end user pain points. And we also have 2 or 3 face-to-face meetings a year. We already met twice. Once at ONS, and the second time was at our Beijing Summit. In the early morning, we had our face-to-face meeting. And then all the meeting minutes and notes, these are actually public. If you go to the wiki page, you can find the meeting agenda and materials that are posted on the wiki page. So I encourage you to take a look at that, and you can follow the discussions that are happening with the end user standpoint. And so the other thing I wanted to talk about really quickly is about events. Obviously, a lot of open source projects were spread out geographically in different locations in different parts of the world. So a lot of community members would get together at like a key industry events. Like OpenStack Summit is a good example. We had a mini summit in Boston for about half a day. And then we had a lot of OPNFV community members that were present at OpenStack Boston. OCP Summit I talked about, we had a booth presence at the OCP Summit I believe it was in March in San Jose. Heather, who's our executive director, she was also on a panel for a keynote on one of the mornings. ONS is obviously a big networking event from Linux Foundation, so we have a Heather presence there. The one that's coming up that I'll talk about in more detail. I mean, OpenStack Summit in Sydney, we're not going to have a formal presence like we did in Boston. Like we had a booth We had a mini summit, but we're not going to do that in Sydney because not surprisingly, Australia is not a very easy place to get to. Right? So it turns out not a lot of OPNFV community members are going there. So we're not going to have a huge presence, but if you look at this Etherpad, like you'll see a lot of accepted talks that are submitted by OPNFV community members. At least a few dozen people will be there. The other event I want to talk about, because that's the next major one that's coming later this year, is the Plug Fest. So the Plug Fest is something that we do twice a year. So the Plug Fest, this goes on for a whole week. It starts Monday morning, goes until Friday. This is where a lot of people come together. They even bring their hardware equipment to the Plug Fest, and they do a lot of interoperability testing, basic deployment of OPNFV and testing with the latest release of OPNFV. You can do an integration of different networking components. Last time in Paris, Nokia brought their OCP-based hardware, but they had NIC cards from a third-party vendor they wanted to test with. So that activity took place through the week, and even deploying Meetup applications on OPNFV. So this is a week-long event, and this is public. This is free, so you don't have to be a member. We have a registration site down below, but if you're interested in attending, anyone can come. And we just had a rules of engagement document that you need to agree to. So what we wanted to do, so the reason why we have this legal document is we wanted to prevent a couple of things. We didn't want people to come to the Plug Fest and say, oh, we participated in OPNFV Plug Fest, so our platform is quote-unquote certified by OPNFV. That's not the purpose of the event. So we clearly spelled out that you're not certified for anything just because you came here. Right? Basically, that's one of the things that we say in the rules of engagement. And the other thing is, we didn't want participants to use the results from the Plug Fest to do any comparative marketing. For example, we don't want a vendor A to come in and say, you know what, we deployed OPNFV and we passed up all the tests compared to our competitors who had a couple of different failures. We wanted to prevent any comparative marketing as a result of their participation in Plug Fest. We want the Plug Fest to be a safe place where people can come in and do experiments. And as you know, if you do experiments, you run into challenges and failures, right? And we want this to be a safe environment where people discover issues and even bugs. In our past couple of white papers that we published after the Plug Fest, we also even list here are the bugs that we found. And this is where you can find the JIRA tickets for the bugs that we track. So we want this to be a safe event where people can come experiment and test OPNFV and not use their activities at Plug Fest to do any comparative marketing. So those are the two things that we spell out in the rules of engagement. Those are the main highlights. But as long as you accept it when you register, you're free and welcome to come. And this is open to everybody. And you might have guessed we started, so the Plug Fest is held after each major release. So we didn't have a Plug Fest after Arno, but ever since Brahmaputra, after each release, we have a Plug Fest event shortly following the release cycle. So we had a first Plug Fest that was hosted by Cable Labs after Brahmaputra. And this was April, May of last year. And when I walked into Cable Labs, I'm not exaggerating, I didn't know how their week was going to go because we'd never done it before. I didn't know if it was going to go well, it was just going to be a miserable week. But I think after a couple of hours, people were already starting to deploy OPNFV and start doing testing on various hardware that were there. And I was very, very impressed with our community. I always like working with all of our community members, but they didn't need any hand-holding. They figured out what they were going to do during the week and they just started working. In Colorado Plug Fest, this was hosted by UNH IOL. This is the first time that we had a couple of vendors like Nokia and Lenovo bring OCP-based hardware, basically. So this is the first time we had a marriage of open source hardware and software. So that was really cool. And just to show the progression of our Plugfest activities, for our first Plugfest, the full deployment and testing of OPNFV took like 4+ hours. So once you kick off the job, you have to wait around a long time to see like the testing results and see what was happening. When we got to the Colorado Plugfest, this was down to like 2 hours, which was a significant reduction in cycle time to deploy and test OPNFV. So I started asking some of the installer PTLs, like what happened between Toronto, Butcher, and Colorado to make this more efficient. I mean, all of them, like universities, said it's a combination of two things. Like one is that community got more experience in deploying and testing OPNFV, and the second thing is that actually streamlined the installation and testing process. So that's why you saw the drastic reduction in cycle times that's needed for deployment and testing OPNFV. So the next Plugfest, the last Plugfest was hosted by Orange outside of France. Orange folks did a fantastic job of hosting us, but we had, in addition to OCP-based hardware, this is the first time we had another like ODM that brought basically an edge device, like a small compact, like a form factor. Edge is a up and coming like a use case that's being talked about in a lot of different communities. So they brought like an edge device that for people to test on. So had another great weekend at Orange. And the next Plugfest, like I noted earlier, is the first full week of December 4th and 8th. It's going to be hosted by Intel, just outside of Portland. I just checked the registration number this morning. So I think we have a cap of 125 people for the Plugfest. We're already up to like 73. So it's very possible that I may have to go talk to Intel folks and see if they can increase the capacity, but it's happening at a pretty quick pace. We wanted, obviously we want like good registration numbers, but if you look at the past 3 Plugfests, almost 2 months out, we're like more than 70 people already registered for the event. So we're looking forward to a good, productive week happening at Intel. And I was actually interviewed by somebody at Orange. During the Plugfest, they had a lot of their internal marketing and social marketing team interviewed a lot of the participants and asking how the week was going. And one of the questions that was thrown at me was that what 2 or 3 words would I use to describe the week? Because they interviewed me on Friday, and the 2 words that came up was like, one was intense, pretty intense week, a lot of work being done. 2 was productive, and 3 was fun. Just a lot of good work being done by community members. You're basically working like 8 to like 5:30. Sometimes it makes for a long day, but it's fun to have a full day of work and go out with community members for beer afterwards. So need for a fun week, and we hope to have that continue in Oregon in a couple of months. And then after each Plugfest event, we publish a report. So white paper, if you go to our resources page, you'll be able to find the white papers from past 3 Plugfests. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And if you're interested, like I said, feel free to register. It doesn't cost you anything. You obviously have to pay for your travel. But this is a good way to meet a lot of our community members. So there are a lot of, not just Plugfest activities, there are lots of breakout rooms where people are actually happy. How do I improve the testing process as an example? So it wouldn't surprise me if the testing working group get together and schedule a number of sessions to work on testing activities as a community. So I fully expect to see that in Intel. And then if you go to, if you go to the wiki, there's a Plugfest page. We already have suggested topics that people are proposing. So there are things like Kubernetes. It's one of the hot topics. Stress testing, like I mentioned earlier, is another topic that somebody proposed. So we're looking forward to a great week in a couple of months. And just a fun picture. So we managed to get a group shot at each of our podcasts. I think our podcast, we had like 48 people attending. So that was our first, and then as you can see, the number of crowd is getting larger. It was like 48. It was around 70 for our second podcast in New Hampshire. The last one in Paris, we had about like 89 or 90. So the numbers continue to grow, and it wouldn't surprise me if you get close or even over like 125 that we're projecting for our next one. So any question on events, or like did I miss out on any events that people are curious about?
What does the hot feast do?
So it's a lot of experimentation. And then the other benefit that we get as a community is that, so we have a new release of new frames, right? And that we actually want to go through the cycle of deploying this on a new set of hardware.
Just like a workshop also?
Yeah, so there are some workshops. So one of the tracks that I'm going to suggest, especially for people who have never been to a podcast, is sort of have our project team leads for installer projects to guide people through, this is how you deploy OPNFV. In this intro session, and then, through that process, believe it or not, so one of the things that I learned after our first podcast was that people that are focused on testing didn't quite know how the installation actually works, or what steps, and vice versa. Like an installer PTL, it's like for them, like a phone test was a black box. They didn't know how to work or exactly push the device, and then basically try to do different use case. Right? So it's really up to like a lot of the participants. I don't necessarily like micromanage this. The agenda setting. Like I just ask people to propose some topics that you're interested in, and then sort of organize it. A lot of it is like self-organization, and then I might help it like slotting to a different appropriate time slot at least a week. But a lot of it is proposed by community members, and I can pull up the agenda topics so you can get a sense of it. But go ahead. Looking at the
so no matter I bring hardware or VNF,
yeah.
Then I bring to Graphics.
Yeah.
Then I discuss with people.
Yeah. So
find a scenario or test case.
Yeah. So a lot of this happened. Like I use the term self-organization. Like if you're bringing like a VNF, so you can find out who else is registered. Like, oh, you know what? I like to deploy my VNF on this particular scenario on this set of hardware. So we encourage people to like get in touch with each other before the event to sort of like schedule this ahead of time, right? So I'll show you which page like really quick so you can get a sense of it. So here's like proposed like planning topics. So the first one, deploying tests, I talked about. Like this is where, if you had never done this before, this would be a good session to come. Basic deploying tests. And the next one that I talked to people like Tina and Trevor about is like integrating ONAP. ONAP is going to have their first release next month. Start talking about the integration activities. And then the list is already long, like deploying with cross CI and ONAP. CVP stands for the Certification and Verification Program that I talked about in Dovetail. Kubernetes and OPNFV. Oh, and the other thing about the PlugFest, if you're familiar with Etsy, they have their like a similar event called PlugFest, right, which is actually creating some confusion. But what we want to do is actually run some of the Etsy test cases during our event in December, because they have their event in January, but we want to use some of the Etsy infrastructure and test cases during our event to provide feedback to Etsy. And Etsy is very supportive of that. And then we already, after our Euphrates Puck Fest, we already set a date for the Fraser Puck Fest, and we're going to actually co-locate our event with Etsy's, which should make travel a lot easier for people who go to both events. So we'll be in France, southern France next year, co-located with Etsy. But I mean, these are, you can sort of see some of the topics that are being proposed, like stress testing I talked about. Doctor folks are going to do like a demo and they have their own hack fest. Automation of some of our release processes is more of a hacking activity, but Trevor is our release engineer. He wants to work through some of the automation activities. Cloud native, there's a session on Yardstick. And the list is just getting, wow. I haven't checked this page in the past few days, and there are at least like 3 or 4 topics that have been added. And so this is sort of where people kind of throw topic ideas, and then what this is going to look like. I'll show you the page from the last Club Fest. I'll end up creating a schedule like this. Like on each day, which room is going to cover which topics. So the actual scheduling of this is where I get involved. Like the self-organization of topics, that's really up to the community members what they want to do. I mean, I think that's what makes it productive, because this is from ground up. They sort of self-organize the kind of activities they want to do during the week. So.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, I saw that have some remote to attend this professor, right? Or do you do the cross country professor?
No, I mean, so the remote participation is actually for hardware. So for some of the hardware providers, like NEC as an example, they have a lab in Heidelberg, Germany. They didn't want to necessarily ship those equipments to like Paris or here in New Hampshire, right? So they made their resources available remotely, so people can use like the hardware resources from where the Club Fest is. I mean, you could potentially participate remotely if there's a particular session you want to participate in, but it's probably going to be through like a meetings like IRC, not necessarily through a teleconference. But this is, I mean, so remote like resources is basically for hardware.
Hi, it's because before we attend ONF the professor, and we did some testing. If we pre-arm together, maybe we don't have some issue because they have some latency. But when we do the remote, at that time I remember we do it in China and also in the United States, and because they have some latency, so some unexpected problem where comes up.
No, we haven't had any like latency issues. I mean, basically what's happening is that, as an example, in Paris, this actually happened like the last minute. There were people from ONAP, they wanted to deploy mostly like e-com software on top of OPNFV. And they're looking around looking for hardware resources, and somebody from NEC said, you can use our lab in Heidelberg. And then, like I said, I mean, deploying OPNFV takes like a few hours, right? So we're not dealing with you're not like interacting with between two sites very frequently, but you sort of kick off a job and then do various testing or whatever testing you need to do. There was except for the multi-site testing that people did. I don't know if like a latency ever came into play between two sites, but I mean potentially that could be an issue, right? But I think for what we're trying to do at OPNFV, we haven't run into that so far.
Okay, because I think at that time we installed we got some issue about the timeout, right? So that's why I asked for latency. At that time we installed the OPNFV, the Colorado, and we got some error message that shows the timeout.
Yeah, but it's a network problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why I think if we do a process of different country, maybe there will be some more issue.
I mean, we haven't like run into that at our podcast. I mean, it's possible that something like, so between Paris and Heidelberg, I mean, the distance is a lot closer, right? So maybe that was an issue. But the other thing that happened in Paris was that ZTE team was actually using their lab in China from France, and I don't think they ran into any. I mean, they were even doing like a VNF deployments, but I don't think they ran into like any timeout or latency issues. But I mean, it depends on I think what you're trying to do. I think, but we're going to have a number of hardware resources available at Intel. I mean, Intel obviously has a Ferris lab at their campus, so that will be used. But like I know a number of companies like Nokia is an example. They're not necessarily bringing hardware, but will have access to their machine in Helsinki. Sure. So, any other questions on PluckFest? But I mean, you can look at our wiki page on. Like, I forgot to like add the link there, but I mean, a lot of like interesting work happens during our PluckFest. So if you can make it in a couple of months, we definitely encourage you to attend. So, I mean, if it's okay with you, I can show like a couple of quick demos, like if that's okay. So the first one, we talked about our collaboration with OpenStack community, and this is, I mean, you've probably seen it here in Barcelona. This was through one of the keynotes that Mark Collier did, and then I think some of you were in our summit in Beijing. We had a virtual central office demo that I can show you, and just quickly go through a couple of demos if that's okay, and then talk about how you can get involved. Go ahead.
I have a suggestion because we play some pizza. Maybe everyone can get some pizza and watch.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can take a break. That works. All right, cool. Yeah.
我没有准备披萨在外面，那我们拿一些披萨，然后饮料，然后进来一边。我想这样子会比较舒服，比较像比较。
所以要吃一点东西才能待在后面。
那边都在吃东西。
那因为是大家刚有这东西。
到这边拿一点披萨，这样子不会那么严肃。第一次参加这个比较，简 说到不行。练球在美国常常会有一些办公室，他每个月都会办一次，然后大家都是拿了币了，拿了披萨就，对，就比较轻松这一点。拿一点披萨，多吃一点，多收拾。
开动。
Oh, no.
Office is from
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Pictures.
Yeah. And you don't even need to be there the whole week. You can only stay for like 2 or 3 days and that's completely.
Hillsborough is nice and busy cities. I've been there a couple times.
Yeah.
And that's really good.
Yeah. So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
It's just like a solar workshop stuff.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it'll be fun. Yeah, I mean, I think like Friday is usually pretty slow, but yeah, I mean, not everybody stays there the whole week. Yeah. And then, I mean, there are like NECs isn't like a necessarily a technical center. I think they have, there was a different configuration. I think they have like 14 servers. Yeah, no, not on site, but at their lab in we all had access. Yeah. We probably had 3 hardware labs at Broadcom. And then there are like 4 or 5 remote labs. So there are people using Intel labs and all the ZTE. There was like one other Ferris lab that was available.
We're still talking about having a discussion with the
Okay. Yeah.
So it's still
Okay, yeah.
And we really want, so that's why we kind of put people actually he's a doctor.
Oh, okay.
And we want to put into the OPNFV project. So there's a guy who's engineer guy with him right now.
Okay.
So we kind of like experiment how to
Okay.
and keep ourselves moving. Otherwise, when people come in, we just try to get the support.
Right. No, I mean, that's fine. Like what some companies have done is sort of
Who can do the changes? Otherwise, when he troubles, we're gonna help.
yeah. I mean, so there's some expectations setting that you can like some labs that you can only support 2 projects. And then, but that's fine. You don't have to. You don't have to be guaranteed like 24 by 7. And then people understand that, like, you know, if it's down for 2 days, I mean, unless it's like right before the release, when there's a lot of outsets. you might get calls. But if it's like, early in the development cycle, as long as you let the affected people know that it's going to be take place and it doesn't need to be a 24/7 support. I mean, I don't think anybody, nobody does. It's not a production environment.
So I mean, we try to estimate how much work we need to do.
Yeah,
we do have some like there's no move we just very focus on the test. Because that's one of the things we're interested about. We want to bring into the whole So still like because we now have engineering looking for we can only focus on infrastructures.
Okay.
Yeah, we just slowly.
Okay, no, I mean that's fine. Like, do it at your own pace.
So focus on the testing.
Okay.
Hopefully I could get more resources.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's always a challenge. I'm good.
There is some curiosity. Why some network function like firewall and the company or checkpoint like that? They didn't join the company, the community.
Yeah, I mean we don't have necessarily VNF vendors that are members.
Yeah.
But they have contributed to our projects in a number of ways. Like like F5 is an example.
Yeah, F5. Yeah.
So I mean there's one of the demos I'll talk about. One of the videos I'll play, you'll see F5 and other VNF vendors that have contributed.
Yes, and that's some use case which should be contributed by this. Actually, is it in the vendor like they do the firewall also something? Yeah. And even the ecosystem change because when before they can maybe there's one box and they are functional and now virtualization. So we had some request from the fire company could afford the Fortinet or something like that. They try to build a platform because they don't want to stay in the box.
Okay.
So they needed to face this change. The network function should be virtualized. But otherwise, in Taiwan, we have lots of requests from before we are ODM company, right? We have lots that provide the hardware for them. But this ecosystem gradually changed. I met someone, the provider for the checkpoint. They fix this, they know that. So they try to build out some kind of platform for their security systems. So you will see infrastructure and different application layer. They try to build their application. Then that will be on top of you. So that's not the framework will be in here. That will be some kind of, I think it will be some kind of integration problem. I don't know, I'm just Google the things. Yeah, not just the interoperate, conformity test or close the model.
Yeah, I mean one of the demos I'll show you is basically virtual central office use case. But we have a lot of different software components that got pulled into
Google membership, there was it's kind of a vendor for the they should be more aggressive to join us. That's why I want to.
那你今天后面毕业了，谢谢。
这里面有在往上 speed 之前。
对啊，对，如果你不要做拉线，你们收多嘛？本来是要就是要到比较偏10个10，然后新的还有10，那你这个希望要变多复杂，或者包括我们公司的
未来有，未来有。
这个方但是其实可以是的一些其实就是它那个特定的这些
交大的
OK，
交大的他觉得是
中国真的比较
就是领导那个，你们是相关的到国
画出来，我现在是关到看到他了。对啊，
他现在国研院
我以前1个礼拜才看到，现在看不到一次。对啊，现在他都说我在他是看到一下。
现在国研院他只
是有要国研院，但是他
我说什么国研院？国研主任。
国研院是以前的就是科技部，国科会有个国家研究实验院，
就像国研院，他现在也是属于国研院啊。
然后一些地震科学，它是一个，
而且改一个名字，
我在地震的应该是
改一些东西，就是改一些或者是我发的一些。
他们说现在广州市也变多，
以前的中心本来就是地震中心、气象中心、地质中心、国家研究实验院。
但是我记得好像还有问领导，是不是要去当官？我就是想当官才可以讲很大声。当官以后讲1个小时。
他们就是日本，就是
当官之后不是又会不知道被那个大卫圈吗？
对。
挖出来，
他们就是
想象一下这样。
结束要开这个局啊。
一拿我去。
不要借贷。
太明显了，对日本。
很明显吗？
很明显了，
很明显。
他们觉得要。
大家都知道。
对啊，大家都说这个变天之后，教授的那个审官职能就划算，对，就明白一样。
然后你说不要吗？做到后来变，
我们教他的斗手，
然后年初的时候告诉我。这样子，这样子，那就开始就全有对，
然后那个中资入股的事情，他也是出来讲一些，
关军那个
就是说
你打的军那个
馆长，上面这些，
这些什么东西？不到
是在什么方向？
你不知道什么跟军那个然后另外不是，
看情境资料，小朋友资料，看资料好买的话，像开始看好看开始，后来就是他们想要做比赛的不一样的比赛，另外然后现在就是
比赛的话，这个资本未来是一个他们是会克制。
其实可以统一管理，可以管理。那类似跟这个大的里面合作。
各位那个可以再拿一些，然后说在那个看一下那个，
看这个有为啥？
开门时间开不到，对的，可以放在手现在在上，因为之后
对，因为这个是
人类永远就是我，快先举手，再拿过去。
你再把它推出来。那谁让他推出来？在后面。 你觉得太肉了，那放中间会肉。但是就是你们的不一定，你就会可以看出来东西的。
没关系啊，谁走到中间谁就在上面讲。
这是历史一个人是不是在一个地方？
就是
他这个是肯定要我不知道吃的在哪一些，然后我们看一下这里。
Is it possible to?
Turn off.
灯关掉一下。前面的。
There we go. So having snack is perfect, so it's because it's movie time almost. So the first one, it's about 10 minutes. So this was a keynote demo that Ryota, who works at NEC, did on Docker. So this really illustrates the interaction that, great interaction we have between OPNFV and OpenStack. And a really compelling use case for people in telco. And one of the things, we started, going to OpenStack Summit since like Vancouver back in 2015. And I remember when I went to the first OpenStack Summit back then, like there were not a whole lot of discussion about telco use cases or NFV in general, but that's drastically changed over the past couple of years. I mean, they just had an event in San Francisco just focused on edge networking.
Yeah.
And it was, I was fortunate enough to go because I live in the Bay Area. It was very good discussions that took place, and a lot of the telco use cases are more prominent. If you go to the exhibit floor at OpenStack Summit now, you see like operators having booths, which you've never seen before. So I'll just play this along, and then I have another demo from Beijing a couple of months ago, but I can set that up after this is done.
Get there. Now I did promise you all one more dramatic demo, so to help me with that, I'm going to welcome on the stage the newest member of the OpenStack Foundation, Ildiko Wancha. All right, what do you got?
Well, thank you, Mark. I got that I'm very excited to be here and be part of this amazing NFV demo, for which we actually have a 4G mobile system running on top of OpenStack on these servers right next to me. So many of the NFV use cases are coming from the telecom industry, and I think I will not share any new information under the sun if I tell you, Mark, and the audience that the carrier grade requirements of this segment are very, very strict. So give you a little bit of an insight, let me share you an example. Mark, you heard about the 5 nines, right?
It's a lot of nines, I know that.
Yeah, that's exactly 5 of those nines. So fill all of you in who maybe never heard about it, which would be weird, but it can happen. This actually means that the availability of a given service has to be about 99.999%. Okay, so amazing, we have still the 5 nines, that's what that means. So it is actually less than 5.5 minutes per year. So I don't know about you, but personally for me it took more than this to have my coffee this morning. So for me, this 5.5 minutes actually means at most 1 coffee per year if I'm fast enough to finish that in time. So that's just tough, right? And I guess I don't have to explain it to you how tough that is to build a system that is actually able to fulfill all these strict requirements. But today, we will demonstrate it to you that OpenStack is capable of serving as a base of these systems. The work has started about one and a half year ago, but we really couldn't have done it alone. We are collaborating with OPNFV, which is an open source community with the mission of building an end-to-end integrated open source cloud platform to accelerate the adoption and evolution of NFV. I'm proud to say that I'm involved in this community in a few projects, for example, OPNFV Doctor. This project is about to handle fault management in the platform, and they are using and also collaborating with several OpenStack projects, for example, AODH, the alarming service, Congress, which provides policy enforcement, Nova, which I hope you all know, OpenStack Compute, and Vitraj, which provides root cause analysis. And without giving out too many hints, I can tell you that Vitraj will be in the spotlight just a few minutes from now. And looking over to Mark, I think I should stop with the storytelling because this guy looks really eager and impatient to get into some trouble. Am I right?
Yeah, let's do something crazy. Let's just start demoing things.
Yeah, let's get the show started. So it is my honor to welcome on stage the project lead of Vitraj, Ifat Afek, and the project lead of OPNFV, Dr. Ryota Mibu.
All right, so Ryota and Ifat are going to actually help us demonstrate what a phone call does look like on an OpenStack-powered 4G mobile network. So, Ildiko, why don't we do something? You make a phone call, and I'll play the role of the real-life chaos monkey over here and see what happens when I start going crazy.
Yeah, now you just made me scared of making the very first phone call live on main stage. Let's see.
Hello.
Hi Heather, how are you doing this morning?
Hi, I'm doing great. I'm hanging out here in the OpenStack Foundation Lounge.
Great. Oh.
All right.
Heather, are you? So put those back in. So you see?
All right. So we all know in the real world cables get cut, and there are chaos monkeys of various types running around data centers and digging up cables. So, Ryota, why don't you tell us how you can actually solve this problem?
Sure. So let me explain the data system first. The phone calls go through this server to launch. In this server, we have NEC commercial mobile phone network of 4G running on top of OpenStack, and it is very high availability requirement. It has redundant hicks and VMs for failover. To initiate this failover, we need fast port notification. But it had been missing in OpenStack. So when you remove the orange cable for the primary VMs, the packet got dropped. And even though we have backup VMs connected by the blue cable, so that's right, yeah. So we started OPNFV Doctor project to develop fault management framework for higher availability. And I think this project is a great example of collaboration among telco operators, vendors, and open source communities. So the project was initiated by NTT Docomo and supported by several companies from the beginning. And in the project, we studied NFV industrial specification and requirement and developed solution architecture like this. And we mapped function blocks in the architecture to appropriate OpenStack services. So Congress inspect for event from infrastructure layer, and Nova, Neutron, and Cinder need to change the status of the fault affected resources. And AODH sends a notification to the application manager so that it can perform switch over to backup VMs quickly. But we still had few features missing in OpenStack. And we received tremendous support from the OpenStack community for the development of these missing features. These missing features are now included in OpenStack neutral release. So let me enable the Doctor features.
All right, Ryota's gonna bring the doctor to the house and see if maybe we can withstand the Chaos Monkey one more time, this time with the doctor project.
So now I'm creating one arm in AODH and 7 policies in Congress. And note, we are using vanilla OpenStack, which means without any proprietary add-ons to the OpenStack. It seems ready?
All right, Ildiko, let's try this again. And I'll try to behave myself, but no promises. Let's make one more live phone call from the stage.
Well, I trust Doctor. Not really you, Mark, though.
Smart.
Are we done, is that you?
Yeah, this is me, Heather. I'm so sorry. So Mark Chaos Monkey just
For real this time.
But now we have
no going back, man.
Turned on, so hopefully.
That's great. I'm sure that will help things arrive.
I can't believe they trusted me with these.
I'm going to do a Mark first, the phone call.
Yeah, the phone call is not totally Mark-proof. The cables are cut, 2 cables are cut, and we can still hear you. So thank you for supporting this demo. See you around this week and have a great time with OpenStack.
Thanks. Have a wonderful OpenStack over there. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
Wow.
Yeah, so I won't necessarily go through the entire demo. The last part talks about the tribe specifically, but I mean, in many ways, this was, I mean, Prabhu and obviously the OPNFV, this took people like, because this particular project, even before it had a name, Doctor, even before it had a name, there were people from NTT Docomo talking about this use case at our formation meeting before we launched. They were saying, this is one of the projects they want to put support behind from NTT Docomo, like obviously with NEC, people from Nokia were involved, and even Ildiko, before OpenStack Foundation, she used to work at Ericsson, being a member of both OPNFV and OpenStack projects. So a lot of things came together, 2 years of hard work, and then the other person you saw, the people on the other end of the phone, that's Heather, who's our executive director for OPNFV. So obviously a good use case, how we work with the upstream community, and then Doctor work actually continues. And they want to evolve and add new features. And when you look at our project lifecycle, we have different stages of project, based on maturity. So we have 2 projects that have quote unquote graduated and became mature projects. Like Doctor is one of them. Like Home Test is another project that graduated, and Doctor was the second one that graduated recently. Obviously very proud of the work they've done. Let me switch gears here and talk about another demo that was done in Beijing. So you've probably heard of the term like virtual central office. I mean, central office is prevalent in many operator environments. Traditionally, they deploy a lot of custom hardware, very expensive equipment to deploy and also to manage. And now, when I went to the Open Dev event for OpenStack they had in San Francisco, the use case they talked about specifically was about edge networking. And now there's a need to have these sort of central office type environments, like closer to the edge, where the consumers are, for things like video content delivery, augmented and virtual reality. I mean, the latencies are very important, right? So there's a lot of discussion happening that are taking place about edge networking, and the virtual central office demo was put together for our summit. And obviously, this involved a lot of planning and discussions to define, what kind of proof of concept we want to put together for DCL. But one of the things I want to highlight, and they're going to talk about this in the video. Once they define all the components, it only took 3 weeks to put the solution together, which is pretty amazing. Like, if you talk to people at like China Mobile, AT&T, to deploy new services, it takes like minimum 6 to 9 months, right? With using like traditional like hardware and boxes. With this demo, I mean, it took them like three weeks to put this together, and then the folks that put this demo together, like after the demo, they've been called into a lot of sales discussions after the fact around the world, and they've gotten a lot of attention, and there's a talk of like creating a project to evolve this use case even further. So I'll show this to you real quick. It's about 7 minutes, and for VCO, I mean, these are live links. We have a solution brief and a white paper if you want to get more details, technical details on the demo. Let me quickly show the video.
So what we're showing here today is a concept called virtualized central office. There are many central offices for all of the carriers. Each central office terminates a variety of different types of services. What we intended to do with central offices is actually a huge source of CapEx and OpEx. So what we intended to do was actually pick the services that are hosted in the central office and demonstrate those as part of a virtualized platform. This is the onboarding process first that we have. We are onboarding all of the VNFs onto the OpenStack platform, and you have a bunch of Ansible scripts that allow you to onboard the different VNFs, and they you can see that this is the VBMG onboarding process that we're going to show. Then the next one is the other VNF from F5, which is the anti-DOS protection. So you will actually, as the video rolls, you will see that there is nothing here first. And then we're going to start off with, running an Ansible script again. And it allows you to now onboard all of the entire VNF very quickly. And suddenly now you see that the network config and DOS config VNFs are being onboarded. Next one is the DPI. Same thing, you run through the Ansible scripts, and once the onboarding process is complete, now you can see the DPI as well as the DOS protection VNFs. Right? This is what the picture looks like with all of the VLANs that have been created, all of the networks that have been created, and with the entire onboarding process complete. That's how the virtual central office looks like. And here's a pictorial view of that picture of that entire setup for the network. Next, what we're going to do is now look at the end-to-end service. So first what we're going to do is get a subscriber to authenticate with the Ericsson VPNG. And the Ericsson VPNG is authenticating that particular subscriber, and then it provides the service. And once it's authenticated, now the subscribers can access any of the services. So that's what we're going to show here, where you're going to take the subscriber. It's basically, again, a scripted thing. It brings up the PPPoE interface, and you can see that once the PPPoE interface comes up, you'll see that the subscriber is already now authenticated, and it's able to access Google.com. Next, what we're going to see a little bit more is access to social media websites. So let me just stop right here. Here, when you try to access a social media website, then it just gets redirected to an HTTPS and says, okay, you have access that's available. That's kind of standard process how it works today. Now what we're going to do is actually try to execute a policy on this and say, in that policy, our policy says no social networking. So we've created an Ansible playbook to say there shouldn't be any access to any social media website. And we're going to run that particular Ansible playbook. What that Ansible playbook does is it goes and installs policy and on the VNF, just on the VNF, and the VNF is now preventing traffic from flowing. So what you do here now is that you try to, again, reach Facebook after the policy is installed on the social media site. It says it's closed, connection's closed, no access. allowed. And instead, it redirects to a captive portal saying, sorry, we don't have access to this particular website. And then you can do the same thing and say change it to a secure HTTPS. Does the same thing and it closes the connection. Now here's an interesting scenario that we are also showing as part of the residential service. In this particular scenario, what you see is first, the subscriber is getting full speed access, pretty high speed, and the subscriber is actually downloading something or working on something. Now, at the bottom, you'll see that there is an attacker that's waiting. Now, the attacker instantiates or initiates an attack by sending a bunch of, flooding the network with a bunch of packets. And what you will see here is as soon as this happens, you will see that the speed for the subscriber starts to go down. And you can see that that comes down from 7K, 3K, all the way down. And now you've detected it suddenly that, oh, there was an attack, and now the speed's going back up. Okay, so you've prevented the attack, you've actually blocked all that particular attacking traffic, and you've shown that the subscriber can get the speed back. So what I've shown you so far is a set of services, right? The residential service and business service. What I haven't shown you at all is how are we going to monitor that situation and where OPNFV really provides that particular. So what OPNFV does, OPNFV provides multiple different services. One, OPNFV allows you first to test the scenarios together as part of the Youngstown project. OPNFV also has a service assurance capability through its barometer project. What we've done is on each one of these nodes, we've installed Collective. Collective works with Ceilometer to actually collect information and provide that to Grafana to be able to plot that particular information. And what we've been doing is measuring CPU load, memory load, I/O load, and so on. And we can plot that in real time and show that the VNFs or the VMs are getting the service that they need. So in this first video, what we see here is a computer stress test that's going on. So first, we're going to start the service with collecting. All right, and what we're doing is now stressing the node with some CPU hops, some IOs, and some virtual memories. We're going to try to create some noise in the system. And once we do that, now you can see that you can actually get the information in real time as part of the Grafana dashboard, and you will see that things have changed. Now, based on this, you can take preventive action, because that's what service assurance is all about. And this is the critical capability that OPNFV provides as part of the barometer project. And you can see that the various different BMGs, you can look at the stats for all of those, what the packets are, what the system's doing, where it is, and how it's rolling. That was using OPNFV barometer to actually ensure that we're delivering the service that we wanted to for the entire residential service use case, as well as the business service use case.
Yeah, so actually, if you go, it's all on the slides, but if you go to this site, you'll see numerous other videos from our summit, so I encourage you to take a look at that if you're interested. So hopefully give you a sense in terms of actual use cases using OPNFV. Both in terms of Docker and, I like the way the VCO demo kind of started. It talks about the general use cases with different VNFs, but the specific values that OPNFV is providing. It goes into a lot more detail, in the white paper, if you're interested in knowing some of the details. So the last set of slides, thanks for listening to me for the past couple of hours. I want to talk about, if you're interested in how you can participate in OPNFV as a developer or other contributors. And before I talk about that, I want to talk about a governance in general. And if you look at the governance of OPNFV project, it's really not whole lot different than other open source projects. We have a board that governs the governance of the project. And under the board, we have different committees for certification and compliance, like marketing and other activities. But what I want to highlight is that the technical steering committee that sees the overall technical operation of the project is independent of the board. The TSC chair actually sits on the board as a voting member, but the board does not actually dictate what the technical community should or needs to do, or how to do their job, so to speak. I mean, the board sort of defines the scope of the project. I mean, if somebody in the technical community decides they want to replicate OpenStack, I think the board will have something to say about that. But for the most part, the technical community is left alone from the board. I mean, it's the TSC that decides on the release date, not the board. When we, went through a number of delays for Arno, I mean, it's to be expected for your first release. It's really hard to hit your original goal or milestone because there are a lot of processes that we haven't thought about, challenges we haven't thought about. The board, wanted OPNFV community to release something within like 6 months of the project starting, but the technical community decided, no, we're just not ready. The quality isn't there yet. The work is not quite done, so. They just stood firm and said, look, we need time to do our work, and we're going to decide on our release dates. And it's been that way, since day one. And I have a call tonight at like 8:30. We're going to talk about Euphrates release, and they're going to decide whether we're ready to release or not. That's fine. And on the technical steering committee provides guidance to the technical community and the individual projects. But even like the individual projects, like the individual project team sort of decides what they want to work on and what kind of, how they want to operate to a certain extent. I mean, a good example, like the different project teams have different rules of how when the code can get merged. Like I think some projects set a pretty high bar, like unless you get a +2 from at least 2 of the committers, like it doesn't get merged. But some projects don't operate that way, and that's, they can sort of define how they want to work. But I mean, at certain points they come to TSC for guidance, but it's pretty unusual. The project teams that work pretty independently, but they're the one doing a lot of the work, and then TSC sort of provides project guidance. So the technical contribution, it's as if like you have very little. I mean, you rarely have like a direct interactions with the board. I mean, the board talks about more strategic points of view, but the goal is to lead the technical community to operate independently and sort of define their work and how they want to operate. So that's sort of it's a bit long-winded, but I wanted to stress that. I mean, earlier in the slide, I showed this directory page where you can find the list of our projects. If you find a project that you're interested in and you want to participate, all you need to do is basically contact the project lead or PTLs or anybody from the project team. And what you'll find for each project wiki page, they'll have like an info file to give you key information about the project. It'll tell you who the project lead is, what their IRC channels are if they have one, like if they have a mailing list that's listed there, and then a list of like committers that are working on the project. If you're interested, I mean, I got permission from Frank to sort of advertise this. Like if you're interested in that DS project, all you need to do is just contact Frank and say, I want to contribute, and easy. None of the PTLs are going to say, I have more than enough people, I don't really want to help. But if you ever hear that, please let me know, because I want to give them an award for having enough resources. But and if you're hesitant about contacting the project leads directly, I mean, just let me know. I'll be happy to make an introduction if that's easier for you. So get in touch with the PTLs, start participating in their meetings. All the technical meetings are open, including the TSC meeting. You don't have to be invited. You show up, and then all the meetings are listed on our meetings wiki page. So if there are particular project meetings or work group meetings that you're interested in attending, just feel free to announce yourself and start. That's the easiest way to get involved, is to just contact the project team and start working with them. And like I said, highly doubt that anyone's going to turn you down. well. And in terms of other communication channels, we have lots of mailing lists. The one thing I wanted to highlight was we have a mailing list for users, OPNFV users. So if you go to this, like a main URL there, you can click on each one of these and start subscribing. So OPNFV users, this is pretty amazing. Like I would see questions about somebody like somewhere in the world. I don't even recognize the name. I'm trying to deploy this scenario using Apex installer. I got this error message and I don't know what it means. And somebody from the Apex team, like within like a day, they immediately jump on and try to help that person out. And I've heard comments from certain people there, the support they've gotten from OPNFV users mailing list is better than like a paid support they've gotten for like enterprise software. It's like a high praise. So it's, if you go through the mailing list, you'll see like some thread that goes like really long. Like, somebody ran, like trying to deploy something and ran into an error and people jump in and try to help others out, and they don't ask questions about like who you work for. Sometimes the email question comes from somebody's email address. That's nobody asking about like do you have a support plan. Within 24 hours or so, like somebody invariably jumps in and try to help that person out. And we have like a separate mailing list for like a working group. So a working group is like a group of projects. Like we have infra-related projects like Pharos is one of them, release engineering is another, and there's a security group that's part of the infra working group as well. They decided rather than us having separate meetings, let's just have like one meeting under like a work group umbrella to make things more efficient. Same thing with like a testing working group. We have, I lost count, but about probably 10 different testing projects. They get together once a week to have discussions across project teams like once a week. And then we also have like upstream community-driven like a mailing list for OpenStack, FIDO, and like OpenDaylight. And the top one here, the Tech Discuss, is where general discussions take place. OPNFV. So those are good. I mean, if you don't want to subscribe it because you'll probably get lots of emails, you can just look at like the weekly archives if you want to just sort of get a summary of discussions that are happening in the community. So I think that's about it in terms of slides. Any question in terms of how you get engaged in the community or? Yeah, I think this is my last slide. And any other questions you may have, I'll be happy to answer them.
没问题，请大家尽量问吧。对，难得他这是台湾第一次 OPNFV 的秒。
The question just because I try to find out now. The ESTI, they have also mobile computing, mobile edge computing, and such a working group for discussion and give a standard or some specification like that. Then that one is emphasizes edge computing things. Right. And if you put some element for the we call the mobile element like the EPC, we do something like the HSS, we just shut down that. The one issue is in the telecom area we have some kind of interoperate, so we need to submit back to the 3GPP, So that's the open source. We still have an issue is how to harmonize all the community. That's what I always think about. We might use such my project use the MCO, we use the central also reorganized, restructure it for data center and virtualization, such services. And we based on the open source to do that. But actually, when you come back to the commercial product and all this, we need to come back to the standards. So what's what I always say is from the developer point of view to to the standard, there's the gap. I always want to try to capture it, not just use open source or open framework to do that. But eventually we need to come to the end point. So my question is, if I do this mobile, or edge computing use the open, because we have lots of function for that. But eventually we need to come back to 3GPP. Do you have any planning how to get into the IQ, this the international standards?
So so this is, that's a good question. Obviously we have a lot of interaction with Etsy.
Yeah.
So the goal is to, create a cycle, right?
Yeah.
The Etsy defines an architecture. There'll be some implementation done in OPNFV and also provide feedback. For example, we try to implement some sort of a certain Etsy spec and then we realize it doesn't work. For a variety of reasons, right? Or it's very challenging. And then provide that feedback to Etsy. So that's sort of the model that we're trying to drive towards. It's like, do we work with all the standards organizations? And the answer is, not necessarily, because the other thing that I want to point out about the open source community is that the open source community members, they get a guidance or inspiration sometimes from standards, but sometimes it's sort of developer driven. They're not necessarily looking at spec. They're not waiting for a spec to come down from 3GPP or Etsy. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, the open source developer community will develop something even without a spec, right? So, I guess the one way to answer it is that, it's really hard to tell open source developers that you need to do this because you have the spec in 3GPP.
Yes.
If there's not enough interest, work may not necessarily happen. Or unless there's a commercial reason to do it. But having said that, the goal is to provide feedback to appropriate standards communities, but the open source developers don't necessarily always take cue from the standards organizations. Our goal is to work with one of the slides I talked about, certain organizations like IETF and SE, we've had good relationships with. We have communications with others like MEF, as an example, and others, but do we work with all of them necessarily? Sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. Because sometimes, communicating with certain a standards organization is not easy because they require us to be a member. Right, and then sign NDAs, and as an open source project, I cannot sign NDAs. That's something that I can't do. So, but we do try to work with a lot of standards groups to provide feedback, and then, there's Etsy, as an example, it just made a lot of sense to co-locate our plug events and to do it together, right, then do it separately.
Because I've been talking with the NTT Docomo or some Orange, because we still have some issue. You will see your members, most of the bigger implementer like Nokia Ericsson, or you have the use case come from the telecom. So it's a funny thing. They are very close to a close community. You follow the standard, then they submit it. But they open the door, you follow this open source and they develop that. So I always confuse, what do we really bridge together for someday? Or what's the basic model we're changing and then connect together?
Even what I've seen from even some of the telco vendors you mentioned, people who work on the standards and open source, they're not necessarily the same people. Sometimes there are overlaps, but a lot of times they could be completely different departments.
Yes. It's very really fun and enthusiastic. The words change, but I also confused by that. From if you look at the telecom, they need to open ATLS because the cost is really high. Or you you want to do some more flexible service, like you just 3 weeks you can do the one place service, you just go on the production line. But this is interesting, but they want to reliability and performance things. So that's why I always, because I do a lot of open source project for that. But still come to the layer reality, I have gap in that. That's a voice that is sometimes very hard for us. But we find I think I think a lot for your this workshop because I find one window for the Taiwan industry.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think about this might be the open window is a good window for us because we have faced the challenge for we need to change because when before we just shipping on a box. And all the stack come from the chipset, then we just shipping that. We don't know how to handle all the networking, the element or some small flexible things.
Right.
But this is such as Cisco or I say the HP, they do a lot for that. But from open source, we can gather lots. We can build up on top of the whole world, children and very large people to use this as open source to try to test it and to know what's the networking function and what's the all the networking the software part or I say the protocol topology, anything you can do it. That's a really big window for Taiwan. I think a lot.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously, the other thing I want to point out, like, I think open source and standard organization have different strengths.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you look at SC, like, test spec, it's, like, very organized. Like, I mean, good luck asking, like, open source developers to do that, like, document things in detail. Mm-hmm. And it's usually very challenging. Yeah. But open source brings, like, agility. Like, they deploy things, like, really quickly, even if it's just a proof of concept. But what I've seen from organizations like Etsy, like in terms of like specs for tests, and they're just very detailed and very organized, right?
Yeah.
So.
That's giving you some feedback and.
No, but we obviously want to have like collaborative relationship with a lot of these standard organizations because they're very important.
It is.
Any other questions or? Well, thank you. Thanks for putting up with me for more than a couple of hours. And it was great, coming here for your first meetup. I, hope that there'll be many more. And I mean, not just like people from the foundation. I mean, we obviously have like about a dozen foundation staff members supporting OPNFV, but we also have ambassadors from OPNFV community. We have 3 or 4 ambassadors in China, 2 in Japan. And we also have an ambassador in India, I believe. So we have several different ambassadors in the Asia Pacific region. And I was telling you that earlier in one of the future events. Like, if you want to have somebody like Kubi who's very invested in the testing community to come talk to you in more detail, I'm sure he'd be more than happy, and other ambassadors to make a 2-3 hour flight over to Taiwan.
好，没有问题。讲一下我们区块链是怎么样子去就以那个 OPNFV 的一些活动。那我们最早是跟 OPNFV 是日本的一个OPNFV 合作。那我们最近发现那个中国大陆它有 SDN 联盟，它里面有700多个会员，他们也是 OPNFV 里面的 member。所以我们就请 Eric 就是简单的介绍几分钟。
10分钟。
剩10分钟。
Oh, okay. Do you want to sit here? Or? No, you're fine.
My name is Eric from III. I would like to share some status, OPNFV status in III. And I just spent 10 minutes. Okay. So Here's the agenda. First, I will have a brief introduction for what we are doing and what we have done and what we plan to do next in the Q&A. So here's our company introduction. AAA is a non-government organization. We have more than 1,000 employees. And I belong to, we have many research areas. I belong to smart system. And our team is focused on SDN and also OPNFV. So here's our objective and more detailed information you can reference to our website. And on the right hand side here is our org chart. You can see. Okay, so as already mentioned, we become an associate member in June or July. June. Okay. And as you can see, also Okinawa Open Lab is our important partner. And China SDN Alliance also tell us he would like to have some cooperation with us because we have one booth in China in April. Then there people come to us and have conversations. So I just cut this page from the OPNFV summit from OOL. So OOL is very important partner for us because he gave a lot of support. And he also is a non-profit organization, and we have a lot of cooperation with them in such as SDN and NFV area. So here is a little bit background. We start OPNFV in beginning of this year, and because our company have embarked NFV, SDN, and 5G project, and we would like to contribute we would like to have some contribution to open source community, and we would like to also share our OPNFV experience in Taiwan. So next, I will introduction what we have done in past. Okay, in this page, we install OPNFV environment in our lab. We install a few and Colorado 3.0. So we have one jump server and one control node and 3 computer node. In the beginning, we only have one control node and one computer node, but some test case is not successful, so we increase the hardware, increase to server node. In the future, we will upgrade to the new version. So the server configuration, we use a Dell machine. It's 730. Okay, so here is our spec. First, we planning and we check requirement and read the document. And second, we try to install the hardware and the software. So first we install jump server and the field server, then deploy control node and the computer. And we chose Funtest as our main project. So we also build a Funtest environment in our lab. And after build the Funtest development, we done some testing, like in without a VMS. And in April or in June, when we we chose without the test case and change it to multi-site test case, and we demo in Beijing Summit. So here is here's a topic. We invite all invite us to additional speaker. So we have one section talk about how to connect test bed in Asia, and you can reference here's our agenda. Okay, this page is our demo in Beijing Summit. So we use OL as a master site and AAA as a slave site. Both have same configuration and environment, but we chose OL as a master site. So we run Funtest Docker on the OL, then deploy VM and rerouter and do some BGP protocol testing. You can check the test flow. Okay, so here's our detailed networking configuration. So we use OpenVPN to connect Japan, Okinawa, and Taiwan AAA. Okay, so what we plan to do next, we are going to do something like we have some requests from operator. We want to do proof of concept, like VIP scale in and scale up. So as you can see, here is our design, but we still under discussion. It's more complicated than the previous one. Multi-site is more easy than this. So we still under discussion. So a lot of things still change. Okay, here's my presentation.
So how difficult was it to deploy OPNFV Colorado in your lab?
You mean the basic one? Or
yeah, the basic one.
Actually, we spent 2 or 3 months
oh, okay,
from
wow.
the beginning.
Okay.
From the nothing, no
Right.
solar, no.
Right. Yeah. But once you had like all the hardware needed in the lab, like how long did it take to learn how to deploy like OPNFV?
After we have hardware, then we spend maybe 1 month.
Okay.
To try and error.
Right. And then you obviously got help from Okinawa Open Labs, I assume.
I thought they spent more months.
Yeah. No, it's not surprising.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. It's I mean, like I was saying.
We would also like to do another project, but we have some resource limitation.
Right.
Actually, we have I think the phase 1. I think when the hardware come to later, we did try to take 1 month. And they're very closely with the Okinawa lab. But after that, because they were close border, so there are some kind of, I think we had some experience and give feedback to the Okinawa, the OOL. Such how to know the router, something like that. So this is really good for collaboration.
Yeah.
I mean, the different scale, different networking scale, different issue will come out. Yeah, so that's I think
in the beginning, they are my teacher.
Now we can they coach.
We can have conversation and maybe some little bit contribution.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a really good interaction for different parts, different countries.
Ribbon, we just see if we can share what we have done.
Okay, that's
yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
What we more focus on the testing ecosystems. And if you guys have some time, so just like
we do great.
We still got like 4 minutes before 5.
Yeah.
So we can make it quick. We can make it quick.
Okay. So you need a agenda,
Maybe she's our technology manager for the contributions.
Yeah, you can also sit here.
I just put it right here so she can use it. Copy.
Yeah, we didn't plan to have any presentation today, but as everyone has some, and this is also a very fresh result that we just finished at the end of September, and it's a long list, but I would like to make it quick. So starting from, let me see.
The original purpose we focus on LED is we want to bring the testing ecosystem into our Red Hat and infrastructures because the Red Hat OSP products, it doesn't have the real testing ecosystem to prove the performance, the latency, or throughput. These can meet some certain criteria. So that's why we want to have the original purpose. We spent some time to have the Red up and running. We start with the D version. And now we move to the E versions. Now we have E version up and running and all that. So we did do a little bit on the front test, but that's the target we want to focus on. So we move to the yardstick, and later on probably will be the VS perf and the slow perf. And so far, right now we want to do most of the testing on the yardstick. It's like a comprehensive testing suite. And there's a lot of the testing tools focused on the computing and storage, just like comprehensive testing. So
So basically, for the testing, we would like to show we would like to prove that the enablement of, for example, TPTK, it really enhanced the performance. So we would like to leverage the OPNFV ecosystem here, the testing ecosystem to prove that. And we start from the yardstick, as Ray just mentioned. So here is a quick overview of the test cases that we selected.
by the way, he's the guy who's more focused on that.
That's our engineer who really did a hands-on. So we selected the green green one are those we at the phase 1 we did the testing. We selected some use cases that we believe we will show the performance difference between the network.
Like you can see what's the benefit after DPTK or before DPTK.
Yeah.
And I know the SRIV now is still missing on the OPNFV.
Yeah.
So we try to integrate it on the Redhead product because Redhead we have the DPTK and SRIV. So we want to bring it in and against the Redhead or OPNFV IVA structures and see what's the difference between DPTK and SRIV.
So we bring in 3 different scenarios. One is like default, use the default like bare metal, our own machines to run the validation, and then with the DPTK on top of the host. And then the scenario 3 is both enable on top of the host and VM. And here is the quick overview of the configuration we built in our lab. That we use a micro server. It's a 3U90 multi-node server because one cluster pretty much satisfy the requirement of the environment.
We have a couple stages. The first stage is just try is a small test, a smoke. So we just make it simple. So we use the 3U90 servers made by Contact, by QCT, and just make it easy. The next step we're going to move to the Berkeley platforms because we want to see what's the Luma balance design will really affect the performance on the throughput or latencies. And the Intel recently just released the Purley platforms, which is we just got the Purley platform a couple of weeks ago. And we want to move from the Grantley to the Purley platform and see what's the differentiations between the 2 platforms and which one's the most good fit for telecom for the customers.
Yeah, probably Purley definitely should have some enhancement. And also because not only enable on top of our new Purley platform, that we also would like to adopt all of the OPNFV on top of the Red Hat OpenStack. That's our ultimate goal, to showcase some performance result in the MWC next year.
The purpose we want to deliver to the customer is the product we have the total ecosystems. The infrastructures not only have the Red Hat EPA features, you guys know about EPA features, right? We also want to work with Intel for the data plan, how to tune the BIOS, because the C states, those BIOS really affect the performance. And the last step is bring OPNFV testing consistent into the whole products.
Yeah.
So when we deliver to customers, that's the whole scheme, the whole set.
Yeah. So the testing result we show here is based on because previously the Red Hat OSP is developed on another cluster, and we would just like to test the OPNFV first. So the smoke test is based on the Apex. And then the E version, it was under E version, and then it also shows the.
It's the spec we have on our testing and all that.
Yeah. So.
These are mainly diagrams. How we test it.
Yeah, in the 9 nodes we use one of it for the jump host and 3 controller definitely, and the rest we use it for the compute nodes. And this shows the detailed network configuration we use it inside. Here is the scenario 1 without any feature enabled.
This is APEC. So Apex over cloud and over clouds.
So it's 3 control nodes.
Yeah, we got 3 controllers.
4 compute nodes.
Right, because the 3 9 nodes, we have to occupy a couple of those for the jumper, and the rest of those for the controller and the computers.
And the second one, as mentioned, is enable the DPTK on top of the host, and then both on host and the VM. Here is as mentioned, we selected valuable that we believe that it would be able to prove the enhancement of the network performance testing suites and test cases.
Those test cases, just go back a little bit. Those test cases, we're facing a lot of the challenges because those testing script is sometimes you still need to have some human errors, and probably you're going to need to fix add more codes to make it functional. So we spend a lot of time, like past few months. The guy said back to me is one of the OPNFV lead in the teams, and he helped to change the code and fix the bug and make it all functional. So we have those test cases. It's what we call 7+1. 7+7 is like for general purpose testing for vacancy and throughput, and the last one, the +1, is for not DPDK features. So if you can explain a little bit more DPDKs.
We just want to enable DPDK in the virtual machine, just like the 3 scenario mentioned, because we want to compare not only the DPDK in the host, but also the DPDK in the virtual machine.
So what the virtual machine you use is right here also?
Ubuntu as the guest house.
Yes, as a virtual machine.
Yeah, we have to customize it. We have to like make it as a cloud image. You have to do some customization on the cloud guest images to make it a DPDK enable.
Yeah, because we need, I know you usually use the DVD for the data hub, but I still have some Intel support for that. There will be some kind of tuning for that.
There's a lot of tuning happening on the cloud image. Yes, we spend a lot of time. So at the very first beginning, the network doesn't function. The cannot get the DHCP address. So we spend a lot of time to make it more cloud.
That's valuable to tuning for that. That's really valuable for that. If you really need hard for that, because when I do the code networking, we use a DPDK near interest for that. That's why I asked what's the virtual machine. I didn't use the River because we do want to scale that. Then what they do, we are bottleneck for the DPDK for the China mobile project.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I say that's some kind of secret for that. Yeah.
So yeah, the selected 6+1 scenario is to prove the one is for the general purpose and the other is show the network performance.
Can you slow down to the page back a little bit? To one more page back. You can see there's the workloads. You spin SDR and it's on the yardstick. I know it's pin probably not be able to generate too much workloads. So that's why this morning we still have a 2-hour conversation. How are we gonna have the real workloads? And to generate, because we want to see the Luma balance, Luma optimizations on the platforms. When you cross CPU, cross the API traffic, how are we gonna reduce the traffic? So you can see we still have a lot of discussion. Engineer right now still in the office trying to working on the different workloads, how we gonna tell the difference when we have DPDK and available on the guest or even on the host, and see what's the differentiation, because we want to bring the whole benefits, even not the hardware, the software as well, and we want to bring the whole stack up.
Yeah, I see some kind of do something use the memory to share memory for that.
To share the memory.
They will do some virtual, we call it networking management, some kind of virtual networking management, some kind of measure for that, and to handle the networking node. Then might be cache in the memory. What's that? That's why they share memory. That's why the key parts, you need to do something. If you're huge data support data parts, you need to handle or catch someone to look all of this. So I saw one in other project they try to use that system. Or there's so some kind of autonomy or something, and we know the handle all the looking.
That's a very good point.
So yeah, we do the pin, the jitter, and then evaluate the packet loss and network utilization and so on. So yeah, the results. This is the quick high-level overview of the result that we conclude that we prove that between at least we can see the 7, even around 75%
with a lot of workloads. A lot of workloads. You can see this just purely pin. You can see a 75% improvements with the workloads.
The calculation you want Yes.
Question plus one. How do you measure the latency? If you use the existing PIN program or you rewrite the PIN program?
That's very good questions.
Yeah.
Because if we want to
very hard, we use the format, right? We just measure latencies.
The latency, how to measure the
Because
latency?
the DPK application, you need to rewrite the application to suit for the DPK application. Yeah.
You said all the results are also only compare with no feature and the DPK in the host.
Okay, when you run AI stick, what do you want to test?
Oh, the host.
Yeah, we provide
If you, okay, so the right side DPK on host, which means your PIN program is running on a host.
On the virtual machine.
Okay, so the packet is comes with the network interface card and pass the OpenV switch and connect to the VM.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then like 12.5% drop in the latency with the packaging workflow. And then absolutely that would prove that it's more stable. And then for the throughput, yeah, customer is more interested in the throughput performance that we did see the 3 times improvement there. Yeah, this is very high level conclusion that we do have the detailed diagram here, but it's pretty long.
Yeah, we share, we do the internal sharing, we're not publishing yet. That's for our reference only internally. So, but welcome to talk, I mean, you guys were interesting.
So for the, like a vanilla, like OPNFV scenario that you deployed, like with Apex, right? Is that the one that didn't have DPDK, I assume, or?
Like, do we have to put the detail?
It's very interesting. Yeah. So our engineer tried to hack the E version. And we tried to download the scenario in the
with DPDK, right?
So the scenario in E version, that's the OKVA and the OBS. Because we also ever try to deploy the E version with the AVN and the DPK. But we finally find that E version released the OBS DPK scenario.
Okay, yeah. So that was a baseline with OBS DPDK or?
Baseline.
It's OBS. This one is OBS. The OBS.
Just purely without any.
Oh, without any, so you deployed like a Apex scenario without DPDK. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, this is our first step, and the next step, as mentioned, we try to enable the OPNFV the same these test suite on top of OS, Red Hat OSP, and we did face a lot of challenges there.
Okay. We're still like working on it, how to move the whole testing suite, just develop to the Red Hat OSP.
Right.
We the EP feature enables. But for OPNFV projects, next step will be like OBS Perf. We did contact with the Red Hat because they are PTL for the ES.
Tim. Yeah.
And for Stoper, we're still trying to find someone who can do a Stoper.
So I can introduce you to Mark, who's a PTL. He works at Dell EMC.
And we want to have the set as a back end. So
okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to introduce you to Mark. And then you're going to be in San Jose next week, right?
Yeah,
if you can share the slide with Heather next week, I think she'd be very interested in seeing this. So, this is great.
That's
all about it. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. Thank you.
Anyone to share your work on?
你那个跟NPL 的那个有没有秀？就是国网东西，没有。还有林克应该会遇到一些。
So anyone want to share your funny work or about income? The new application just talk.
Yeah, I think after this workshop, I got some feedback. I think we have some kind. I find out that Chiguai has play some role for help the industry.
Oh, okay.
And to promote the OPNFV.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be
because
great.
we have test pads, we know how to do the test pads, and we are real test pads. And such industry, they try to do the visualization and how to use the to compare with OBS or DVD. And also you need some functionality to try to get through all the application scenario to test. Not just it's fun. So do you want to share something? Do you have some any question on that? No? So any questions? No? And some direction to come from the additional NPL. NPL. Yeah. So you want to share some testing? Yeah.
今天没有特别签的。
Yeah. You can give us some instruction on NPL. Additional what is additional? That's the good way.
那如果我们
没有的话
，OK，希望继续。你发了Linker Network。
I'm from Linker Network in Taiwan, and our company is focused on container network. And now we are cooperating with the ONF.
Okay.
ONF really has some brigade. We call the project the container brigade, and we want to have a demo in the next month's core build. We want to move the core environments into the connected environments. And in our company, because we are more familiar with the network setting, we have tried to implement a connected CLI container interface plugin to support a pure open switch solution. And now we have worked with the OS member, and now it's in progress, but I think we will have a demo on the next month's field. And about the OPNFV, I have see a release note of this series. I see there is some intern project in this open retriever. It's issued start by the China Mobile. Is something they want to move the OPNFV into the Kubernetes. I think they have something similar to us right now, and I'm trying to look into the community, and maybe I will connect to the host to share some information about the Kubernetes. Okay.
Yeah, they actually changed their project name to Companion for NFT. Yeah, so because that actually makes more sense. But yeah, the PTL is from China Mobile.
Yeah.
I don't think I met him personally, but yeah, if you have any issues like getting in touch with him, just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no more any question, then we just end up this session. Thank you, everybody.
I would like to take a review.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We're going to tweet this.
他这一样要放那个。
要不然你就可以放个小时来放放个
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
你放空一个。要你这个多平常这个熊。我也是，全部都在这边。站在这里，然后背景就是我们。
跟所长有会议吗？5点跟所长有会议吗？哦，难怪他说那个所长他回来，他在刚刚打电话过来，他电话就说那你先说5点，那个他说要出去，然后在那个。
现在就要出去。
对啊，他说另外安排另外一个会议。
所长现在要出门。
对，不是要出去，就是另外一个会议。
他现在刚刚回来是吧？
对，他刚刚是说你5点。
对，我会有跟那个。
那这边快一点。
这边可以。
那我快一点，然后马上回去。
哎，谢谢。
No, they from this way.
我才觉得年轻啊，因为我觉得我会受得到年轻。对啊，哎，在这个人只有30岁以下。Yeah, in that because our our VP represent from CU. Okay. Yeah, so we just one来，年龄多少？年轻的人多。
先在前面。
Open source just coming to the session so we are ordered to talk.
看这边1。
哎，你是放那边照吗
1 2 3，你按不下去，不好意思，再来，1 2 3。
照起来吗？
有。1 2 3。好，再来。1 2 3。
你来这个，我帮你们照相照，帮你们拍到呀。你的笑的脸。1 2 3。One more. 1 2 3. Okay. So you need to go to upstairs.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Perfect.